Perfect. Yeah. So by a show of hands, how many people have already used Svelte in production? Wow, that's cool. That's awesome. And how many people have used SvelteKit in production? Okay. And SvelteKit in production before 1.0? Yeah. So we have a brave audience. That's awesome. So I recently worked on a project. I'll mention it later on. And it gave me the input for this talk. So let's have a dialogue about it. So who is this guy who's talking to you? I'm a husband and father of 4 kids. I started out in robotics and then turned to the dark side, to the web. I'm currently a dev lead at Emakina, which is an EPAM company. I'm also a musician because with 4 kids, I have plenty of spare time. Recorded 1 studio album, 1 studio single, and play regularly in a band. Yeah, I'm also one of the founders of Svelte Society Vienna, or Sviena, and it's great to having you all here. So what is a dialog? So a little screenshot from MDN on the side. Dialog is an HTML element. It's very underappreciated in my opinion. It's a dialog box, so that's something that we use in web development, confirming or doing some other stuff. The great thing about it is that it has accessibility built into it. So there's a lot of stuff that we don't have to take care of because it's built into the platform. As a lot of Svelte people here know, Svelte loves to use the platform. So one of my recent projects that we worked on, we used the dialog. It's for the TU Wien. So it's a community map, will go live pretty soon. And we handled this register overlay through a dialog with SvelteKit, of course. So it needed to have a certain standard of accessibility because TU Wien is required to implement accessible websites. And yeah, we had some great learnings as a team on using that in combination with SvelteKit, and I wanted to share them. So here's Franz back again with us. And we wanted to, I wanted to guide you through some basic usage of the dialog and how we use it, how we can use it with SvelteKit and play around a bit. So I prepared already some code snippets. So I already mentioned it is an HTML element. So we can just add our dialog element into our normal Svelte markup. So if we go here now and go to our base implementation, we see nothing happens. Why is that? So one thing about the dialog is that in itself, it does nothing. There are 2 ways of using the dialog. Either you can use JavaScript to open it, and there are 2 properties on it. So let's type it in here. So with dialog, we have either show or show modal. So with show modal, we get a little bit more, depending on a use case, a little bit more accessibility stuff with it. And it's the way I prefer to use it. We can also use the open attribute on the dialog element itself, so it will automatically open. But I usually use the show modal, which brings some added benefits with it, which we'll get into at a later point. So let's just go back to the home, and then let's go to the second implementation. So now when we show the modal, we actually see something. So hi Vienna, we can enter our email, we can submit, the close actually works because it's a link, and we go back to a different URL. But like clicking outside and all of that stuff, it's not really working. Focus trap works though, which is awesome. So if we move over to the next one, little pick here for the packages that are. It's a collection of some useful things that I collected working with Svelte. So the Svelte packages. I was really astonished that the name was still available. So one of the things that I extracted from one of the projects was the click outside action. So it's real easy to use. You use the click outside action, and then you can have a function that's called. In our case, we just go back to the main route, but it can be anything for handling. So if we go back to here, so with the click outside, if I can, oh, there it is. If we go to the click outside action, we can now click anywhere, so inside, so that's working. If we click anywhere outside, it closes the dialog again because we move back to the home route. But we can do anything that we choose to. So one example also to mention here from SvelteKit, we could save the state. That's something that recently launched inside of SvelteKit, where you can save some application state and then restore it when the user gets back to the form. Awesome for newsletter subscriptions, for example, like we're trying to build here. So another thing that we kind of have is, well, I maybe should stop that because otherwise I can't show it. So for the click outside, if we submit, for example, if we use escape, because every dialog has to be, it has to be possible to be exited via the escape because of accessibility. So if we close, we see that the URL doesn't change and we're still on the same page. And we don't want that. So as a next step, what we can do is we can listen to the onClose for the dialog, and then call the same close function and go back to our main route. So if we go here, we hit the escape key. So we're now back at the start page of our application. So another thing, marketing always wants some styles. So our newsletter subscribe form has to be outstanding. So we can add some form styles. We can make it bigger because bigger is better. So now we can add some beautiful styles to our application. So we get more and more newsletter subscribers. And yeah, all of the stuff, of course, still works if we click outside. There's less space to click outside, so maybe that's why we get an increase in newsletter subscriptions. But there are, I mean, it's really boring. It just pops up. So maybe there is some built-in way inside of Svelte that we could like make it more fancy. And actually there is. So for dialogues, maybe worth mentioning, inside of dialogues, you usually have to, or should use a form with a method of dialog. If you want to submit something, I think posting also works, but then I didn't try all of the things out with post. So we're using the method dialog and then catching the submit and doing the submission there through JavaScript. So a little disclaimer here. So one thing that we can do is to use the built-in fly animation, for example, and animate it in for 2 seconds. Because if we animate it in for 2 seconds, surely everyone will notice popping that up from the bottom. That's so beautiful. But the nice thing is we can always fall back to our basic CSS, and we can also, like if we have some animation that we want to do just with CSS, we can do that and slap in a slide in from the bottom CSS function, or do some other animation stuff there as well, where we scale it in. That's usually a little bit of a hassle if you want to slide it in and scale it in at the same time. Maybe that will change with the Svelte 4 stuff, where they want to rework all of that magic for us. So just to show that, we also can have transitions with purely CSS and sliding that in. So those were some of the learnings that we had as a team by trying to be accessible, trying to have all of the features, and a lot of the stuff we didn't have to build ourselves, like the escape, watching the escape key. We didn't have to build all of that because we were using the platform. So this was a really short and quick talk about a dialog, underappreciated HTML element. I'm #done. Thank you for listening, and let's have some dialogue after that. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I would have one.
Yeah.
So the process support is pretty new, right, for dialog?
Dialog is actually pretty old, but let's look it up. No.
Quite old, actually. I think it's like
It's a really
5% project.
In all the browsers?
Yeah.
So my question would be like in comparison to libraries for the models, like is there anything you missed actually?
With JavaScript,
Yeah.
you always have the possibility to have errors. Like if you use the platform, you have to write less JavaScript. So let's see. So dialog Chrome 37. Anyone below that? So I guess we're on the safe side. 15.4.
That's pretty new.
That's pretty new.
Yeah.
Well, almost 1 year. Almost 1 year. Okay, good.
I mean, at least that's what people update.
That's true.
Yeah.
And the thing you use with the transition on the dialog, you can use on any HTML movement?
So that's the way that works is when it enters into the DOM. So either when you switch route and it first gets initialized, this transition is applied, or if you have if you show something conditionally inside of an if block, then the transition is also applied. If you want to specify a transition only for when the element enters or when it exits. You can do that with in or out syntax instead of transition. Yeah, and if you, like, the cool thing is, if you increase the time to a really, really long time, like 5 seconds, you can even stop the animation while it is ongoing and reverse it. So that's also something that comes out of the box.
And once, when you remove an element from the DOM, you can also have a transition before? Use the...
Yeah. Yeah. So the way it works is it kind of, the framework delays taking out the DOM element. So it applies the transition first and then pops it out.
Are there any other elements beside dialog that you kind of figured out, okay, we could just use this, like summary or whatever?
No, not yet. Good. Then, thank you all for coming out today.